I'm confident that the Prime Minister and his team will do that, and I'm certainly looking forward, hopefully, to being supportive in another way.
What do you think the Prime Minister should be looking in a new finance minister to lead in the path of recovery?
I think that the decision on the next person for this role is the Prime Minister's decision. I'm looking forward to being supportive of him in any way I can in that transition. What's most important, I think, for Canadians is that they see this continued stewardship of the economy in a way that will support them through this challenging time, and recognize that we have an opportunity to continue to ensure that Canada is a great place where people can all find the kind of opportunities that they want to find for themselves and their families. And I'm confident that that's what's going to be the outcome of the next steps for the Prime Minister and his team.
Prochaine question. Next question, operator.
Thank you, merci. The next question, la prochaine question is from Tonda McCharles from Toronto Star. À vous la parole. Please go ahead. Tonda McCharles, please unmute your line.
All right, so
sorry about that. Sorry, I'm here. I'm sorry, I was on mute. It's the story of the pandemic. Can you hear Mr. Morneau?
I can. You're off mute now, Tonda.
Thanks. I apologize. Mr. Morneau, can you clarify, were you asked by the Prime Minister to resign?
No. Tonda, this morning I went to the Prime Minister and I tendered my resignation. Obviously, I'm looking forward to a next set of opportunities, and I'm keenly interested in how the Prime Minister will continue the work we've done together over these last 5 years. And I'm confident that he will do that with the continued focus that he's had on behalf of Canadians over the last 5 years.
I take your statement, but I would like to understand. Did you, in the vernacular of a previous finance minister's scenario, did you get quit? And if so, what was the tipping point?
Sorry, can you say that again? Can you say that again?
Were you, Monsieur Chrétien once said of Mr. Paul Martin, or we were told that he got quit, or Mr. Martin described as that. Do you feel you were forced out by the revelation that Mr. Trudeau was turning to Mr. Carney and other sorts of matters like that? Were you effectively quit?
You know, what I want Canadians to know is that the work that we've done together has been the work of a lifetime for me. It's been something that has been enormously rewarding personally. It's been a real privilege to have this job. But like any job, there's a time where you're the appropriate person in the role and the time where you have to decide when you're not the appropriate person in the role. Since I'm not running again, and since I expect that we will have a long and challenging recovery, I think it's important that the Prime Minister has by his side a finance minister who has that longer term vision. And so that's what led me to conclude during this time period that it's appropriate for me to step down. And I have every confidence that he will find a way for the next steps with a team that will be in there for the long term and ready to do the hard work that we need to do to continue to support Canadians.
Thank you. We will now be going over to the room. First question.
Hi, Mr. Morneau, Mackenzie Gray with CTV. You just referenced that you were no longer the appropriate person for the role of finance minister. Did the WE scandal make it so that you were no longer the appropriate person for this job?
It's important to recognize that, I've been involved in philanthropy for many, many years, and that role has continued. I wish that in hindsight, we had done things differently around the WE charity. As I've said, I think that it would have been more appropriate for me to recuse myself from that decision. But moving forward, I think that the most important thing is to think about where you can have the appropriate impact at the appropriate time. And what I'm saying now is it's appropriate for the Prime Minister to find someone with a longer term approach to being finance minister than I can give, since I'm not going to run again for federal office. And I think it's also an opportunity for me to step forward into a potential next step with the OECD, and that would be a way that I could continue to serve.
There were numerous reports that outlined a potential rift between you and the Prime Minister, saying that you might not have wanted to spend as much money as the Prime Minister and others in the government wanted to do. Were there any major policy rifts between you and Mr. Trudeau?
Well, I think it's really important to recognize, and my discussion with the Prime Minister this morning, we both recognized the necessary, vigorous debate that comes between a finance minister and a prime minister. For that matter, between ministers and the prime minister. That's the way you get to better policy outcomes. And I'm absolutely of the view that that vigorous discussion over the course of the last 5 years has led to better outcomes during the course of our first term, better outcomes through the pandemic. So, I'm looking forward to watching and to seeing that continued important policy discussion that will lead to great outcomes for Canadians.
Sarah?
Thank you, Mr. Morneau. Sarah Sears, CBC News. Did you let down the Prime Minister and the government by not disclosing your travels with We?
No, in fact, my travels were always disclosed. The issue really was that I unfortunately did not get a bill for some of that travel and found that out obviously much later, 3 years later. But what I've done is I've done my best. I've apologized for that and moved forward. And I know that the important work that we're doing is more important than that problem that we had. And I know that from the Prime Minister's standpoint, he'll be looking to make sure that he can continue on the work and deal with that as is appropriate.
And to touch on questions my colleagues have asked, what was it like to see the stories about you in the press this past week, saying that you were at odds with the Prime Minister? And did those anonymous leaks to reporters make you feel pushed to make the decision today?
When you take on a role like the Finance Minister, you know that people are going to watch closely the role that you're playing and your actions, and there's always going to be a role for commentators to have a point of view. So this week was part of what it takes to be a minister of the Crown, and I will look forward to watching politics from the outside and hopefully contributing in another way.
Next question.
Laurence Martin, Radio-Canada. Dans l'affaire Uni, on vous a reproché, M. Morneau, ce qu'on a reproché aussi à Justin Trudeau. Pourtant, ce soir, vous êtes le seul à quitter le navire. Est-ce que vous êtes la personne sacrifiée dans cette affaire?
Ce que je peux dire, c'est très important de considérer le temps approprié pour les prochaines étapes. Et ce que j'ai dit au Premier ministre ce matin, c'était un honneur et un privilège de travailler ensemble pendant 5 ans. Et pour moi, c'est le bon temps pour considérer les prochaines étapes. Et c'est pour ça que j'ai dit que c'est pour moi la prochaine étape de considérer la position de secrétaire général de l'Organisation de coopération et ça, pour moi, est une façon de continuer de contribuer à l'avenir pour le Canada et pour le monde.
Et donc, vous quittez ce poste. Est-ce que vous avez des regrets, des choses que vous auriez fait différemment?
Ce que je peux dire, pendant les dernières 5 ans, on a fait beaucoup. On a fait beaucoup pour les Canadiens et les Canadiennes. On a changé la situation de chômage dans notre pays avec le niveau de chômage le plus bas pendant les dernières 5 décennies. On a continué notre approche pendant la pandémie pour assurer que les gens ont le support nécessaire. Donc, pour moi, c'était un privilège. J'ai beaucoup des mémoires importantes et je vais continuer de considérer comment je peux faire une contribution dans le monde. Jamais. As I said, I'm really proud of the work we've done over the course of the last 5 years. We've made a huge difference. We've come up with the lowest unemployment rates before the pandemic that we've seen in Canada. We've helped 1 million people get out of poverty in this country. The work in the pandemic, I think, has been absolutely instrumental in supporting people during a time of extraordinary challenge. So I'm proud of the work we've done together, and I'll watch carefully to see how the Prime Minister continues to support Canadians in a time of great challenge.
Thank you, merci. Nous allons maintenant retourner au téléphone pour 3 dernières questions. 3 last questions over the phone. Operator, c'est à vous.
Thank you, merci. Please press star 1 at this time if you have a question. S'il vous plaît, appuyez sur étoile 1 pour toute question. First question, la première question is Jordan Press from the Canadian Press. Please go ahead. À vous la parole.
Good evening, Minister. I wanted to ask you, last week, the Prime Minister essentially said he had full confidence in you. Can you explain what happened over the last week from the Prime Minister saying that to today? I mean, did you lose confidence in him, or did he lose confidence in you?
You know, I really appreciate the Prime Minister's support, both last week, but really over the last 5 years. We've had a great opportunity to work together. My decision today was really very much about thinking about the time that's right for me, the time that's right for all of us in the pandemic. I think it's necessary to have a finance minister who has that longer term perspective to get us through a long-term recovery. And that really was what led me to go to the Prime Minister this morning and say that that was the step I wanted to take.
Yeah, you're saying that you want someone to come in for the long term, and yet you're at the same time saying you'd like to be the next Secretary General of the OECD. Can you just explain then why you should be in that role if you don't see yourself being in a long-term position in this role and guiding this country through the worst economic crisis it's seen in generations?
I think that it's really important for someone to want to be in this political role for the next period of time, and I think that period of time will be very challenging. So that is what I'm sure the Prime Minister is reflecting on as he thinks about the next finance minister. For me, the opportunity to contribute to the challenges that we're going to face in the globe. The OECD is there at the center and thinking about issues like international taxation, the digital transformation in our world, thinking about how we can deal with the challenges that we will be facing as we get through this pandemic. So that would be a new and a different role. Of course, I'd be able to use the expertise gained as a finance minister for a G7 country, having gone through enormous challenges, to help in another way. So I'm looking forward, hopefully, to that opportunity. But I recognize it's a competitive process. There will be countries looking for who can be best to fulfill that role. And I'm looking forward to that discussion with those countries as we think about that.
Moderator, I'm sorry, we'll have to cut this short. Thank you. Merci à tous.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much.